All right. I'm trying something a little bit different today with my notes. I started, I've got like slides with the notes on them, but I printed them all out last week and that was just a total pain. And then I was writing them on index cards last night and I was at this little coding meetup that I go to. And my friend was like, you could just put it on an iPad. I was like, oh yeah, I work in tech. I should have figured that one out. And also, for all the examples, I'm going to use CodePen. I don't know if, I think Sanjana used CodePen for her examples. CodePen's amazing. I don't know why I wasn't using it in the beginning. Instead of flipping between Atom and the browser. Just because you can have your HTML right here, your CSS, and then, so this is like this is your Atom, and then this is the browser. Sorry? Yeah. And then you can see your transitions and you can see your animations live. It's amazing. So yeah, if you like it, let me know. If you hate it, also let me know. But I'm gonna try it out. So today we're gonna talk about responsive design and implementing media queries, which are a tool that will let us make our websites responsive. We're also going to look at a parallax scroll animation, which is a funky little visual for your web page, which is pretty trendy right now. And then we're going to deploy. So I guess first we'll talk about advanced CSS2, do a little bit of a review. So can anyone tell me about advanced selectors? What do I mean when I say advanced selectors in CSS? I'll hide my hints. Can't see it. You can't see anything.
The relative ones like sibling.
Yep. Adjacent. Yep.
Whatever.
Yep. General sibling. I love that they call it general sibling. Like, I don't know what a non-general sibling is. I mean, in life, not in CSS. Adjacent and stacking. So, so first off, stacking. Go away. What's stacking?
Would it be possible to make the text?
Oh yeah, of course. Is that better? Cool. At any point, let me know if you need me to make it bigger. Yeah, so, sorry, I've just got this code pen up with A, B, C, D, E, and F, and we're going to style this using the advanced selectors. So, so if I'm stacking selectors, what am I doing with those?
Using like multiple links, like body or
yep.
P's, divs.
Exactly. Yeah. Using multiple selectors, and we're going to do that by separating them with commas. So I'll just uncomment. So I'm going to pull this up a bit. We don't need to see the HTML. We've got child A, comma, child B, and that's going to apply all of those styles to those classes. And then we've got adjacent, which you can see. So I'll show you that. And that's going to take like the next, it's sort of like saying like all of them but this one. So the one bad thing about this is that my iPad screen goes off with my notes. Adjacent uses the plus to basically select any elements immediately following it that match. And then we've got general sibling, which uses the tilde or the squiggly line, as I like to call it. And that selects all the siblings of a type that follow an element.
The P plus P version is something I still don't, like I see what's happening, but what I thought it would be is the first two P's as opposed to the last two P's.
It's kind of not intuitive, is it? Right? Because that is what you would think.
But
And
I'm
that's what
struggling
I
with
think.
Flexbox for the last little while, and it's not intuitive at all. So it's like I'm not finding this surprising.
It's yeah, it's kind of weird. It basically, yeah, it's using this plus in a really different way than we like to use it in math. But it's saying like, okay, this is the first one. I want to select this type, but the ones after it. Um,
So it's not the two of them together. It's whatever comes first. What's going to happen is after the
Yes.
plus sign. Okay.
yeah, like if I put another,
If you were to go div down below.
we're done. Sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
I'll just put an extra one in.
Right.
So then that's
That
like
makes
the
sense.
3 after. Sorry, what were you saying? What did div do?
That
Or
you just did exactly what I was suggesting. So.
cool. Is that kind of clear for everyone? Hang on, bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just going to make my screen not lock. Maybe I'm not. I'm just going to keep my hand on it. So those are our advanced selectors. And then we've got pseudo selectors. Does anyone want to shout out what pseudo selectors we have?
Like hover.
Yep, hover. So yeah, hover, basically pseudo selector allows us to select an element in a specific state. So we've got child B here. We hover over, and you select it with the colon. So your child B, hover, and I'm going to say background color light blue. And then as soon as I hover, got light blue. Do you know how you can check the state in DevTools? Anyone done that? Show you really quick.
When you go to inspect, below where it shows the code, there's normally something that says like .hub or .something, and you can click on that.
Yeah. Super, super small, but hub. So if I click on hub, then I can like force the element state. So if I wanted to test some stuff out in DevTools, I could say hover, and then test out like what I want it to do in that state. Just a fun tip. Thanks, Ryan. Cool. Then we've also got ways of selecting, so like first child. So div first child, so that selects the first div. Color coral. And then we can do crazy things like select the second in a even more different way with nth of type and make the font size bigger. Then we've got pseudo elements. What kind of pseudo elements do we have?
Selection. Or wait, sorry.
I mean, it is selection, yeah. Well, that's kind of a part, like an interaction. So pseudo elements style part of the element itself. So if I cover here, what's this going to do? So I've got it's targeting P, and it's saying on selection.
You select it, it'll turn blue.
Yep. Ta-da! Way to go away. And then we have our fun transitions. And this is just the shorthand. I know you'll have looked at before where you had them broken down into like what you're targeting, the time, the type. but here's just a transition shortcut with a nice one-liner. So that's going to say, it's going to target the background color, which is kind of relating back to this here, the background color light blue. And then our ease in and out. So, and then when I take it off, it's going to go away. And that's how we do funky animations. Okay. So now we're going to talk about media queries. Can anyone tell me what a media query is? Actually, let me start this. Well, we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but where do people do most of their browsing online these days? Phones or tablets. But it's pretty unlikely, unless you're like working at an office job and like to slack off a bit, then the majority of the browsing you do is on your phone or your tablet. And so huge part of front end is making sure that they're accessible for different screen sizes. And that's where media queries come into play. And they're how we make our websites responsive, how like our web pages responsive, especially on mobile. And we use media queries to apply different styles based on the screen size. So in our CSS, we can actually say, hey, if your screen is less than 768 pixels, which is like the max size for a tablet, then change the style to this. If it's less than 300 or 460, which is about phone size, then change the style to this. Cool. So got another code pen. Okay, so we have our nice little website here. I opened this up. Sometimes I don't. We get like code snippets for the lectures to start with, and I opened this up and I had no idea what the picture was, and I burst out laughing. And I was at work because I was slacking off. But anyway, this is actually my hometown. Anyway, so we can see already. Oh no, hang on. I put the responsive stuff on. Let me take that off before I show you. Okay, this is like sort of good version, but we're gonna go back to bad version first. This is the only problem with practicing my slides before I show them to you, is that I put the answers in. Okay, and actually, before we talk about that, we'll talk about breakpoints. Breakpoints, like I was saying, are the points at which you would set that change in style. So large screens are min width, and you would say in your code min width 1024 pixels. Medium screens, so tablets, 768, and small screens, 480. There's a lot of variety around kind of smartphone width, but as a general rule of thumb, you can go with 480 as like a max width. So this is what a media query looks like, and this is like the syntax for it. The first part is we state media. So this is like the keyword that says, hey, we're applying responsive design now. And then the media type, which is going to be screen in our case. There's also print and speech, print being for printers and speech being for screen readers, but we don't need to worry about those. We're just using screen. And then the expression, and that's where we'll put like our max width, 768, or min width in there. And then within that, so you're kind of like hugging all of your CSS selectors into that, and that's going to say apply these selectors, these to your HTML. Cool. So, oh yeah. Can anyone tell me what this is going to do if I apply it to code? In like English human words. Yeah, Mark?
Anything under 666 pixels wide, so let's say on your iPad or something like that,
yep,
it will make the font size in a div 24 pixels tall.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and add. Right. So this is our little web page, and now you can see it's like terribly unresponsive. And you just get a giant gopher taking up the page. So we'll add our media query in, and I'm just going to add that right at the bottom of the CSS. I go at media, screen, and I'll say max width 768 pixels. And so now anything in here is going to apply. So the first thing, I'll make the header and the footer a little bit smaller because they're giant. Oh, 10%. And font size, 16 pixels. And I'm just going to copy that for the footer as well. Okay, so now we get smaller, the header and footer jump down a bit. So that's looking a little bit better. But also, what I want to do is take care of this content container. And I'm going to give that a percentage as well. And so now it's taking up the page instead of before it was like shortening up a little bit. Cool, so that's better. Still not great, but better. Going to add in, I'm going to change the flex direction. So the sidebar and Mr. Gopher are in a flex box right now. And they're in flex direction row, which is the default. What do you think would be a better option for a smaller screen size? Column, definitely. So now, and this is where the magic of Flexbox really kind of kicks in, because you can use that to kind of pretty quickly change the style of your design on smaller screens, which is awesome. And then the last thing we'll do is just take care of the image, because that's huge. And I'm going to say, give it a width of, hey, now we have a smaller gopher. I mean, that's still big, but it's better. Does that make sense? Is there anything you want me to repeat on those? A little more clarity on?
Is there a way to do it like
more like a gradient. Like instead of saying for this size of screen, everything below make it this size. Say like you should scale based on in proportion to how big the screen is. And kind of, does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. I'm gonna look at that because I suppose the answer would be the way you do that is by setting things like percentages. So where you've got the height, you set that to 10% of your screen.
Yeah.
And that scales. For media queries, not as far as I know. And I don't think that it would be a common practice because I think you can kind of achieve what you want with either like percentages or, I guess percentage of the width, and then using the media queries to kind of style that design. So you can get that scaling, but also have the breakpoints.
With the percentage of the width.
Yeah.
Does
that
okay? Yeah, I think that makes
kind of make sense? I'll look into it more.
I guess there's not that many different screen sizes. I mean, there's like phones, tablets, laptops.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of like there's not like a million. I don't know. If that makes sense.
Well, the reason Flexbox is great is because it's taken out a lot of having to style for like no one wants to style a web page for 10 different screens because that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But with Flexbox, you can kind of say like, hey, if it's in this range, then do this. If it's in this range, then do this. I was looking the other day, and some websites are now being styled for wearables as well. And then you're talking like, I don't even know, like 50 pixels. Don't worry about that. Like, hey, if you want to do that as a stretch goal, go for it. But yeah, I think the majority of your kind of scaling needs are taken care of with media queries and just the way that you've sort of laid out your CSS widths. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then, sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
If you like flip your phone and it rotates everything, does
Landscape.
it just take the new height of like?
Yeah, it'll adjust to the. It'll basically like flip into landscape.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can check that out with DevTools as well. There's a landscape option. I don't know if you. This is the responsive side, and you can go landscape too. Does that kind of clear it up?
Yeah.
Makes sense? Cool. Any other questions before I go on?
Just one.
Yeah.
I noticed there's min width and max width or max. Sometimes they're using one or the other. Is it good practice to kind of choose one direction and like start only do max width all the way through, or just is there some
Right.
like some things are better for min width or?
Yeah, definitely. The way I usually see it styled is for phones, it's max width for 480. For tablets, it's min width 480, max width 768. And then for desktops,
They put it together.
yeah. Sorry, so you can specify both so that it's like containing that, and that's why you've got the max and the min. So I could say max width, min width. Do it that way, yeah. Like 400 pixels. So here I've said min width 400 pixels. So it's defaulting back again because it's not picking up this style because it's less than 400 pixels. So convention, the way I usually see it is by like phones is max, tablets are a combination, and then desktops are usually min width 768. I don't know if there's a like totally right way of doing it. I think it's whatever works for your web page. Cool. I've got some examples as well, actually, of kind of responsive design. And I'll show you. So actually, the first one we'll look at is LinkedIn, because I was looking at this the other day, and it's a really good example of a site that actually isn't that responsive on a web page, but they're really clever. Hang on, let me open up another tab. So we've got LinkedIn. And if I resize it, it's like, it's okay. And then it just gets garbage. And then like I can't see that. But if I open up my DevTools and sort of force it into like thinking it's a mobile device and refresh, then immediately it's gone, you're on mobile. Go to our app. We've got you. And then it redirects your app. And you probably see that a lot on your phones where it's saying, try our app instead of going mobile. And then this is really nicely responsive here. Even down to here, which is ridiculous to look at, it's still pretty responsive. And then another cool web page, and actually this is a good, not that one, not yet. So I'll show you Slack first. Slack is probably the best I've seen in terms of responsive design on just like purely on the desktop. Let's see when it's super responsive. Like right until like I can't even make it smaller. And they've done all that with media queries, so Slack is really good. And then there's another site, and this is just kind of fun, but Jen Simmons does some great videos. If you're interested in, if you want to kind of look at more advanced CSS, like CSS Grid, I'd recommend her YouTube videos. She's got some great stuff, but she's also got this just like experimental labs site with different layouts, and some of her stuff is really cool. Like the way that this is responsive, and then all of a sudden, so yeah. And then lastly, I have to show you a bad example of responsive design. And I feel really bad because I Googled like bad websites. And I feel so bad for these guys because they're just like a nice little hotel in England. But like their website game is not on. It's like even when you open it, it's kind of off center, and then it just disappears. And I mean, this isn't actually that bad if they did this on purpose, which I don't think they did. It's kind of clever because you've got the menu on the left, but it's not great. And the background, like, I can only assume it was made in the 90s.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a blue sky anymore since then.
Yeah. Or Vancouver. So that's an example of, maybe for like nostalgia's sake, it's fun to make a site like that. But generally, with perhaps your portfolio, something you might want to stay away from. Okay, that's responsive design. Any other questions around that? All right.
I just had a question, sort of, but in general. Is there
Yeah.
a way to save an HTML, CSS, like website as like a PDF or something like that?
Yep.
How would you go about doing that?
I can go through that with you
Cool.
at the end.
Perfect.
Remind me.
Yep.
I'll write it down, but yes. Cool. Any other questions? Okay, parallax. Anyone tell me what has anyone seen parallax? You have, you just don't know it. That was a trick question. Okay, parallax is, I'll show you. I've got two examples of a parallax. First one is this page where we get this like nice kind of scrolling text over, and this is a video. I don't know if you can see. It's like the snow is down. So that's a bit of a simpler implementation of a parallax. It's basically just like scrolling text over an image, and then there's this one's really cool. So this one's a little bit more complex, and the way they've done it is they've actually got like different images that scale as you scroll, but you still got that effect of like the text on top of an image. It's trippy, right? So that's a parallax. We're gonna put a parallax header on our code pen. Actually got a new code pen to start with. Oh, and the other thing with something like a parallax is there are different ways to do it. We'll be doing the CSS way, but there is a JavaScript way as well, which is what they've done here. But as with most things, there are like lots of different ways to do it. So I've got my code pen, and I've replaced Mr. Gopher with like a ton of p tags with zombie lorem ipsum, which we'll use to scroll over the parallax. And before we do that, talk about the how to put a background image on. So there's three kind of components to the parallax. First thing is background. To set a background image, you would put background in your CSS and then URL in brackets the path to that image. So whether it's a path like here where you're directing it to a file, an image in your folder already, or like an actual link, which is what we'll do on our code pen. So we'll do that first, and I've got an image to put on, just so you can see it first. Nice little image. Looks like it might be in Scotland or somewhere. Open up the CSS. I'm going to put it in the header. And they always have to be, the path has to be surrounded by quotes for it to work. There we go. So it has worked, even though you can't see it too well, because it's just taking like this top strip right here. So the next thing we're going to look at is background size cover. Sorry, just flipped really quick there. And this is how we set like the amount of space the background takes up. And cover makes it as big as possible without stretching the image. It's either going to crop the width or the height to make sure that there's no empty space. There's another attribute, contain, which scales the image as large as possible but doesn't crop it. For now, cover is great because we want it to take up the whole space, but another use case for using contain is actually, and this is like a totally true story, I was working on our company webpage, and we work with Teletubbies, and because we're a playground like company, and we had this like really nice parallax background of like Teletubbies and kids on slides, and I was using background cover, and our marketing director came up to me and she's like, "We can't use this image. Like, they've been really specific that you can't decapitate Teletubbies in their pictures," and it had cut off because it was using cover. It was like cutting off the top of the Teletubby head, and apparently that's a thing. Like, you're not allowed to decapitate the Teletubbies in your images. So if you run into that problem, contain is what you'd use, but we use cover. Okay, so it's getting a bit better. Like now it's actually, we're gonna be able to see the whole image instead of just like what it was giving us before, which was this bit. And the next thing is background attachment. And this only works when a background image is specified, and it determines if the image stays in place or if it scrolls with the content. So this is what gives it like the parallax feel. And actually, before I do that, let's make the height like 60% so we can actually, let's make it 80%. 90. So right now, if I scroll, it's just one kind of flat image. But if I add fixed, now we have scrolling text. And that's parallax. Any questions about parallax? Pretty clear? Cool. All right. Our last thing is deployment. So I'll show you how we're going to deploy our websites. This is in Compass later today, so when you'll get to this point, it'll look familiar. But I'll just show you quickly how we deploy, and we'll use forge.com. So this is just a hosting site. You can go and sign up. You just have to do like an email verification. You don't have to put any billing info in or anything. I've already deployed a site, but I'm going to go ahead and add a new site. Oh no, I'm not, because it wants me to do that. So let me delete that. Let me see if I can delete this and then re-add it.
It'll only let you have one.
Yeah. Really delete this site. Okay, cool. Sorry. So when you sign up, this will be like the front page, and you can set your URL. It doesn't need to be hamster. It's about a cat. So this is my cat's resume. Cool. So I've created the URL, and then I just need to upload. And to do that, I need to zip my folder. So I've got all of my folders in I've called it Echo Deploy, and that is basically everything that I'm importing into my resume. So I've got my index HTML, I've got my styles CSS, and then if you've added like a PDF of your resume to download, you'll need that in the same folder, and your picture as well. So everything that goes into your resume goes into this folder. And to zip it, well, I'll delete the one I already zipped. Just right click and compress. And then I can just drag that and drop it in. Cool, and it's uploaded. And now I can go to forge.io. And my cat's got a resume. And that's how we deploy. Any questions about that? No? Cool. Just looking at my adorable cat.
Is that last line true?
Yes. Yeah. She's like 17 years old, and she's deaf. And she gets really needy at like night. She wakes up at 4 in the morning. So she meows really loudly, and either me or my stepmom has to like go out and sleep by the cat because she won't be quiet. So it's great when I go home. I'm like, oh, I get to sleep in my big comfy bed, and I spend most of it just placating the needy cat. So
The cat won't come up on the bed.
nope, no. She does it. She goes on my dad's bed, but they've got like 5 benches for her to climb on because she's like old.
Friends of mine built stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes she's just like, no, you're coming to me and you're going to turn the fire on when you do. But she also brings you socks as presents. So that's my cat. Yeah, that's deployment. So that was a fairly short lecture today. We did a bit of a review on our advanced selectors, and then talked about media queries, which is going to be the majority of what you're working with today, styling your web page for different screen sizes, and then checked out parallax, and then deployment. Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Yeah.
Just more general. If we're not kind of fully up to date, should we just try and do this anyway, or should we just kind of keep working?
Keep working. Yeah. If you're not like completely up to date, then just keep going because it's all gonna sort of tie in. Yeah. All right. Yeah, give me a wave if you have any questions at all, and if there's anything you want to go through, then let me know.